Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video from Aman Talks NRL SuperCoach. In today's video, I'm going to go through my current team, do a bit of a team reveal, just to show my updated thoughts are after TLT. Now, as always, I'm still going to be tinkering. I've constantly got a headache around certain players in my team, so I'm definitely not locked in. But this is my current latest team. So I think there is hopefully some value in hearing my thoughts around my team and current players that I am thinking about. So if you do enjoy the video, really appreciate a thumbs up. Do please consider subscribing to the channel as well if you haven't already. Let's get straight into it. So if any of you have followed me on Twitter, you would have seen my tweet where I said my updated team has got absolutely nothing left in the bank. And is it fate? I don't know. Maybe this is the team that I run out with. It's actually got nothing in the bank, which is quite crazy when I think about it, when it's got a lot of players that I do like. There's certainly some players in here that I think are probably going to be locks in my team. So I'll kind of just work from the forwards to the backs, and I'll quickly touch on the players who I think are pretty much locked in. And you'll see a little bit later, there are definitely some spots I'm still up in the air about. Now, hooker is definitely one of them, so I won't talk as much about Brandon Smith just yet, but Chris Randall, I think, is probably going to be locked into my team. It looks like he's going to be in for some decent minutes at the Knights there, so at 245k, should be making quite a few tackles. He's got a pretty decent work rate. I don't think there will be too much upside from him, but I do think he can be a decent cash cow to begin the year. In the front row forward, pretty comfortable with Payne Haas and Max King. So Max King's got the bench spot at the Bulldogs, and Payne Haas I think is probably the best front row forward to go for. I think his price is good. I don't see him getting much cheaper than that, so I think locking him in at the start of the season seems like a good move in my eyes. Now moving down to the second row forward, a few players that I am locked into here. I think Fafita is almost certainly going to be in my final team come lockout, as is Ewan Aiken. I've kind of decided that Aiken is the 486k 2RF I want to go for. I have considered other options like Britton Nakora, Taumalolo, even the likes of say Satili Tupanua, or even a Jack Bird, but I think Ewan Aitken, it looks like he's going to be locked in for 80 minutes, at least while Tohu Harris is out. The Warriors do have a nice draw, had some good attacking upside at the back end of last season. He's kind of been in my thoughts all preseason, so I don't want to overthink it and tinker around with it too much now just as we're getting closer. So I'm probably going to keep Ewan Aitken in there, I think, at 2RF. And on the bench, Targo and Tuolagi, I think, are pretty much locked in there. I could flick around with the team, maybe put Targo down at centre wing. Currently, I've got him at second row forward, but he 100% will be in my starting 25. There's no doubt about that. Now, Angus Crichton, I would say, is close to a lock, but he is a potential make-way if I look to try to put money elsewhere in the team. I would be very keen to start with him if I can, but he's one who I would say a lock, but there is a little bit more of a doubt compared to some of those other picks there. And Helam Lukey, again, bit of a doubt around him, whether he'll be in my starting 25, but I have made the decision to go with him over Nanai. Just seems like I feel more confident seeing him more in the preseason than I have with Nanai. And I think at 351k, look, he's a slightly more expensive option. So it could just be a case that if I've made the wrong call, I'll just make a swap down to Nanai and not have to worry about trying to find the extra funds to go up in the alternate situation. You'll probably note that there's no Ethan Bullimore. Just thinking more that he probably looks more and more like a potential trade out in the future. Just the pricing is a bit awkward as well at 280k. So currently I haven't got him in the draft, but he could very easily make it back there if, say, the money works. But at the moment I haven't included him as I have got a few doubts around him. Now going to the halfbacks, there's quite a bit of solidity here, I think. Ilias and Schneider are pretty locked in as my kind of bench 5'8" and halfback options. I think they should be great cheapies to begin the year. And Sam Walker, I'm pretty confident with now that Cleary's going to be out for the first 3 weeks. I want to capitalize on the Roosters' great draw. They've got a lot of their big players coming back, so I do see them as a team that will score quite a few points. And it looks like Sam Walker is in line for the goal kicking as well. One small thing to note is that he was actually listed at number 6 in Team List Tuesday. Now, if that continues, he could actually get that 5'8" position added to him from around round 6 onwards. Now, that would be really handy. It would mean I could keep Sam Walker and use Dylan Brown in my 5'8" as a bit of a make-way for Cleary by switching Sam Walker down to 5'8". So if that continues, I'll be very happy to see that. So again, that's another small reason why I'd be confident in Sam Walker. Now, Dylan Brown, a bit more of a punt, this one, that's for sure. But I like the fact that he was back on the left-hand side on the of the Eels for the preseason. I started with Dylan Brown last season. A lot of the reason was that he had very good base, so hopefully you should only take a few more attacking stats for him to get a pretty decent average. The base hasn't changed, but I do feel like there could potentially be a better chance of the attacking stats this season now that he is back on the left there. So he's kind of my more punty pod play in the 5'8" position there. Now the centre wing, I've actually gone a little bit heavier in the centre wing compared to I think a lot of other teams out there. I have got the usual crop of cheapies, the likes of Sean Russell, Amon, Penasini, Valea from the Warriors, and Billy Smith. as well. So I think all 5 of them are pretty much locked into my team. You can throw in Targo in that kind of crop of cheapies, but currently he's in my 2RF. Katoni Staggs, I think, is also going to be a lock for me, just at 433k. I think he's one of those guys, when he's fit, he definitely can score well above that price tag. He's kind of like a 60 to 65 averaging player in my eyes, and he's priced much cheaper than that. The Broncos do also have a pretty nice first month of the year, so I really like Staggs in my starting centre wing. I don't want to go completely cheap in my centre wing, just because we have seen in the past couple of seasons, the centre wings have started the seasons quite well. So I want to have a little bit of money in there if I can. That's another reason why I've gone with Lomax. Now, I know Lomax does have a tough draw, but we have seen historically him do quite well actually against the tougher opponents. So picking out a few games from last season, he scored 64 against the Eels, 67 against the Panthers, and a 95 against the Roosters. So I think the fact that he's goal kicking, the Dragons do have what looks like good attacking potential with their young talent around them. So I think if the Dragons do well, Lomax should hopefully get some handy kind of top up to his points, just with the fact that he is goal kicking, and he does have pretty good base as well. So I feel like the floor with Lomax is not that bad, and I think at sub 500k, I think his price is lower than what I expect it to be. Like, I would consider Lomax more of your kind of mid 500s price centre wing. Now, the draw is tough, but I feel like he could be a nice pod play. So at the moment, I've got him in the draft. But again, he's someone I'm not fully locked into, just because I could take some money out of that. You know, I could downgrade to the likes of a Kurt Mann, a Xavier Coates, and that money I could use to beef up the front row forward, because it is the front row forward that I'm most concerned about, I think, in this current draft. At the back there, Tedesco and Pappenhausen, it looks like there's still potentially a little bit of doubt around Pappenhausen based on news that we've got today. But I think if he's fit for round 1, I'll probably stick him in there for sure, but I probably won't captain him, because it looks like he might give up the goal kicking, at least for this round, with Nick Meaney filling in at 5'8". But say, for example, if Pappenhausen was ruled out this week, I'd probably just make a switch to Gutherson. I feel like I still want to keep the money there, and then I'll just try and make a move back to Pappenhausen in the future. Now, going all the way back to the top of the team, Brandon Smith, and this is a position that I'm still very much up in the air about. It's either Brandon Smith, Reid Marnie, or Harry Grant for me. Now, Grant, I'm actually starting to lean slightly away from. Just, I think the fact that he doesn't play round 1 is kind of putting me off just a little bit. And so it really was then thinking, Smith versus Marnie. And the thing with Smith was that I felt like I didn't have enough plays from the Storm. I would only have Pappenhausen, and it just didn't sit right with me that I only had the one player from the Storm. Now, thinking about it more, Smith might not be the best way to go at the moment, just because he did score a lot of tries last season, and I have mentioned this in the preseason that I feel like some of his scoring could be unsustainable, and especially the fact that if he's playing at lock instead of hooker, we might see him not be as close to the try line for those kind of burrowing efforts that he's very renowned for. So I'm thinking about it a little bit more. It could be a very easy switch to Reid Marnie. I'll do a bit of tinkering as well, just in a little bit, just to show what other kind of permutations I could do with the team. But overall, I think you can see I've put a bunch of lock symbols. I think these players are basically locked into my team. Maybe slight doubt with the likes of Crichton, just if I really need to find the money, similar with Lomax, but a lot of those other players I think are very locked into my team. The 5'8", still, I could maybe think about going with a Munster, but Dylan Brown, I think I'm thinking about it more and more. I probably could add the lock symbol to him at the moment as well. So there's only really a few positions I'm still tinkering with. Say the likes of Andrew Fafita. The Sharks did have a very strong bench in terms of forwards. So Fafita, I'm not sure how many minutes he's going to get. He might not even stay in the team longer term as well, just because they're still waiting for a few forwards to come back into the team as well from injury. So Fafita, I'm still a bit iffy about. It's really that front row forward that's giving me a big headache. It's a question of, do I want to take the money out of there just because I think there's better value spending it, say, in the backs and the centers, or maybe in my 2RS with my edge back rowers? Or the other train of thought is, do I just spend a little bit more there, maybe upgrade Tanul Brown or Fafita to like a Jai Arrow, an Oit Kamanu, or an Adam Fanua-Blake, and then that means I just don't have to waste trades in that position. I can just set and forget it, Payne Haas, Fanua-Blake, and just keep them there for the duration of the season. So it's kind of two trains of thought, because if, say, I went the Adam Fanua-Blake route, it probably means I'll have to start taking money out of Lomax or Crichton. And so I have started talking myself a little bit more into Lomax, but still very much up in the air. But I think that's my current draft as it stands. I'm fairly happy with most of the team. Could be a couple of tweaks here and there. I would really appreciate to hear all of your thoughts as well in the comments below, so do get commenting down there. In the next section though, I'm just going to do a bit of tinkering on the actual NRL page just to show you some different permutations that I could go through with some of these players who I'm not 100% set on. Alright guys, so I've just switched to the actual NRL SuperCoach page, and as you can see, I'm not lying, I've got 0 in the bank there with my team. Now, a few things I'm thinking about more and more. it could potentially mean a downgrade of Smith to Reed Marnie, as I just mentioned. Now, if I did want to go down the route of maybe beefing up that front row forward, say for example, Tanua Brown, I think could still be an option at 275k. He could be maybe a more comfortable kind of third front row forward as opposed to Fafita. So say for example, I left Tanua Brown in there. Again, so I've only got the 207k to play with, only saved about 2k from Reed Marnie. Now, I think I'm going to keep majority of the backs there. I think Sam Walker, Brown, Ilias and Schneider, I'm leaning more and more to, I think, just keeping them and not tinkering too much there. It's really in the backs that I'm thinking more and more about, just because we do have a decent amount of cheaper centre wings that I could maybe consider. I think Stags is basically locked in. It's really this kind of low max position I'm still toying with. So let's say, for example, maybe not choosing a player just at the moment. If I wanted to beef up this, make this my kind of second front row forward, someone I could consider if I don't want to go all the way up to a Fanua Blake, could be a Jai Arrow. It could also be someone like a Stefano or Tukumanu. I'd maybe just lean Jai Arrow just for the fact that he's playing in the edge. So maybe there's potential for some attacking upside. And the fact that he's also got dual flexibility, trying to also think about dual flexibility wherever I can as well. So let's say hypothetically, maybe I do put in Jai Arrow. So then that leaves me about 246k then to put in for a center wing, which in all honesty, given the fact that I've got the majority of the main cheap center wings, there's not many that I can afford. But yeah, we start getting into the likes of Tafua, Dejan, RC. A lot of these guys are not actually playing options. It might mean going straight down to enough, say like 175k, maybe like a Cooler from the Sea Eagles. But I mentioned in the stream yesterday, I'm a little bit iffy on him as a number 14, just wondering how many minutes is he actually going to play. Could end up being a bit of an AE nightmare. I think what I'd do instead in this situation, I'd maybe take out Targo and put him in the center wing. And then instead what I probably would do then is go for a cheaper 2RF. So again, thinking of players that I haven't fully locked into my team yet. So 246k, there's not really too much that I can afford there. Maybe I could go to a Bullimore. So potentially I could take out Lukey, safe it in Bullimore. That leaves me 317k. Again, I'm just not sure how many great options are there at that price tag at 317k. So again, it still feels like I'm trying to cut corners that I don't love, in all honesty. So yeah, I'm not 100% sure if I really want to go down that route. I think I'm more confident in Lukey, say, than Bullimore. I think Lukey is more likely just to hold his position for the long term compared to someone like Bullimore. And so, yeah, I'm really iffy about what I would do there. I mean, I could maybe consider, instead of going with Arrow, maybe someone a little bit cheaper. Maybe if there's anyone in kind of that 300k range, or say the low 400s. But again, just none of these options really thrill me. I mean, Jacob Saifidi may be an option, but the Knights have a lot of forwards coming back into the frame in the next few weeks. So long term, I'm just not sure how good the prospect would be for Jacob Saifidi. The likes of McLean, Gilbert, they're all named on the bench there. Cohen Hess, I'm not really too keen on as well, when I can go for a Tanua Brown, who's a lot cheaper. So yeah, it just doesn't thrill me. Maybe Makatoll, but he's coming off the bench, so you can kind of tell that I'm a little bit all over the place, and I think it is tough for me to kind of play around, I think, with those positions. It might mean that I take out someone like Angus Crichton, which I don't love, but say, for example, Crichton. If I took Crichton out and I brought in someone like maybe a Josh Curran, for example, if I wanted to go for kind of your higher price 2RF, or maybe I just keep Brandon Smith. Let's say, for example, I stick with Brandon Smith, but I just have him at 2RF instead. Then that leaves me 760k. So say, for example, if I did stick with Arrow, and apologies guys if this is a bit difficult to follow, I'm just kind of wanting to be a little bit more off the cuff here just with this particular section. So Arrow, that leaves me 303k. Again, for 2RF, that probably leaves me enough, that does leave me money for Bullimore. So I could then maybe just go with a Bullimore, just hope he falls over the line for a few tries at the beginning of the season and could make some money. So that might be a way that the overall team gets balanced a little bit better. I'm not as concerned then about my front row forward, nor am I that concerned about my center wing, just because I know that I've got someone like Targo who's probably a decent play. And so this would be my team in this case. So I would have, instead of Targo, my 2RF, I'd have Bullimore. I'd be taking out Fafita for Jai Arrow. And then the main changes in the backs there, taking out Zach Lomax for Targo, and then moving him around there. So that's something I could consider, because I don't think the center wing looks too bad there. This very easily could be the team that I run with, but clearly you guys can tell that I'm a bit all over the place. So I think as it stands, I'm liking more and more going with Reed Marnie as opposed to say like a Brandon Smith, but I still don't mind keeping Brandon Smith in the team as I've just shown here. And yeah, I think there's a few players that I'm still tinkering around with, as you can clearly tell. So hopefully this made sense, and hopefully you guys found some value out of that. I know it's not the most clear-cut, coherent, yep, I've absolutely locked into my team, but hopefully you guys understand that there's still so many decisions I think we need to be making. There's obviously a core of players that I'm definitely locked in on. There's just a few that I'm just tinkering around with, the likes of Brandon Smith, Lomax, Bullimore, maybe your front row forward like a Jai Arrow versus a Fafita and things like that. So I would really appreciate your feedback and comments below. Hopefully the tinkering around help you understand kind of what my general thinking is as well. I don't love the fact that I've lost Crichton there as well, but I'll probably end the video there. Hopefully you guys found value out of that. As I mentioned, do give it a thumbs up. This will be the last kind of recorded video prior to lockout, hoping to do a live stream up until lockout tomorrow, just to answer any of your last minute questions and to also lock in my final team. So you'll definitely be able to see my final team if you do tune into that stream tomorrow night. So hopefully you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you all in the next one.